and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. We're back with another segment where I, the host, Joe Ligato, will be answering a question from our audience on how do Latin American countries navigate their relationships with both China and the US, considering the economic opportunities and geopolitical dynamics at play. And so one thing to consider when talking about all of these countries is the United States considers Latin America to be its backyard. It makes sure that really no other foreign powers can dominate Latin America, and it also makes sure that no other major powers arise within Latin America. And so Latin America has been suffering because of this, and you see this based off of all the people coming from Latin America to the United States for economic opportunities. And that's because of the fact that despite these being very resource-rich areas, they can't grow, they can't prosper because the United States constantly foments tensions, constantly foments civil wars, rebellions, coups, etc., and even the gangs within Latin America in order to destabilize this region. But the United States is losing influence there. China has been becoming the primary trade partner for a lot of Latin American countries nowadays, and China has been, like the rest of the world, building infrastructure projects all across Latin America. And they've also been trying as much as possible to control things like rare minerals, which can be used in building things like electric batteries for electric vehicles throughout various parts of Latin America. And so these countries, to a very large extent, benefit from trade with China and benefit from connection with China. One, just because of the fact that China is always looking for win-win cooperation, and two, because of the fact that they have a lot of resources, a lot of things that would make them a good trading partner with China. And so we're going to look at each of these countries separately. I took 6 countries here to talk about because I thought these were very central, very salient to the current conversation. And so the first country we're going to talk about in regards to how do Latin American countries navigate their relationships with both China and the U.S., considering the economic opportunities and geopolitical dynamics at play. The first country we'll be looking at is Mexico. And Mexico is interesting because Mexico had all of the elements necessary to be a major world power. It has a decently large economy. It's very centrally located for trade. It had a lot of technology, a lot of potential for industry. However, due to its closeness to the United States and due to losing a war against the United States and having to cede territory to the United States really dominated that area. And the United States didn't want any strong competitors, not only in the Americas in general, but also they definitely did not want a strong competitor directly on its border. And so unfortunately, Mexico has suffered because of that. And there's a lot of evidence pointing to guns being smuggled to Mexico, a lot of evidence that various intelligence community organizations have been allowing and supporting the drug trade in Mexico because that helps destabilize the country. And Mexico, the government, the people are very sick of the fact that this destabilization, this drug war is occurring in their country. They know that to a very large extent it is the United States that is causing these problems to happen, causing these problems to arise. And because of that, they would like to have some degree of sovereignty, some degree of agency within their country. And so they're trying as much as possible to have ties with China and with places like Russia. They're interested in joining the BRICS alliance. So Mexico is a major country in terms of wanting to be a part of the new multipolar world order. And because of that, you're seeing that Mexico is having a lot of tensions with the United States right now, and they're pivoting more towards, I would say, China than the United States, although there are certain economic opportunities to aligning with the United States. So the United States is interesting in either bringing manufacturing back to the United States, or if not possible, either friendshoring or nearshoring. And in the case of Mexico, they would be a part of the nearshoring, where manufacturing could be taken out of China and brought to Mexico. However, what they're tending to find is that it's still cheaper, still more beneficial for corporations to have manufacturing in China versus places like Mexico. And so the United States has had a lot of trouble with nearshoring manufacturing to Mexico from China. And so we're seeing that Mexico I would say to a much larger extent, needs China versus the United States, though it has to be very cautious in terms of how it has those relationships because of the fact that the United States is on its border, and the United States is a very aggressive power, particularly within its own kind of sphere of influence within North America in particular. Another set of countries we have to look at, I'm just going to take these two together because they have a lot of things in common in terms of their dynamics with China and the United States. How do Latin American countries navigate their relationships with both China and the United States, considering the economic opportunities and geopolitical dynamics at play? And the countries we're going to look at here are Cuba and Venezuela. Cuba and Venezuela have been very hostile towards the United States. They understand that the United States, to a large extent, is conducting economic warfare against them. They're sanctioning their countries. I believe I remember hearing it was either Cuba or Venezuela was trading with Iran, and some of those boats were just like taken over by the United States. And so the United States is not only directly not trading with these countries and sanctioning them, but they're also making sure that other countries cannot trade with them as well. And so it's a very chaotic situation there. And as long as the current governments are in charge of Cuba and Venezuela, which the United States has been trying to topple for a very long time. But as long as those governments and governments aligned with the current government are in charge, they're going to be firmly in the camp of China versus the United States, which is really interesting because in an earlier segment we talked about European countries and how aligned they were with the United States and how they were willing to sacrifice themselves for the United States interest. But now you're seeing countries within the Americas that are more heavily aligned with China. And so that has to be a pretty scary element, a pretty scary aspect of things for the United States, that all these countries right next to them are far more aligned with China than with the United States. And so Cuba, Venezuela, they're not balancing the relationship at all. They know that the United States is out to get them, and they are completely in the camp of China. The next country, and I know it technically is not a Latin American country because it has Portuguese origins instead of Spanish origins, but we're going to consider it a Latin American country because Portugal was a part of it is a part of Latin Europe, and so we'll just call it a Latin American country here. So how do Latin American countries navigate their relationships with both China and the United States, considering the economic opportunities and geopolitical dynamics at play? Brazil is the country we're looking at now. Brazil is a huge country, very large population, very large amount of land mass, very large amount of resources available to it, very, I would say, centrally located. It's a good place to be in. If you want to have trade between North America, South America, Europe, and Africa, I mean, Brazil is a pretty well-located country. I mean, to a large extent, you might have even considered Brazil as a potential competitor to the United States if the United States hadn't gone ahead so quickly in terms of industrialization, modernization. I think Brazil is really strategically located that it could have been the United States. It could have been the major power in the Americas. And so Brazil, like Mexico, like the United States, had the opportunity to be a major power. Unfortunately, the United States got there first and made sure to destabilize other countries in the region to make sure they didn't become competitors to the United States. And Brazil is, I would say, there's a lot of tentacles attached to them from the United States. There's a lot of intelligence community interests, a lot of foreign influence from the United States, making sure that Brazil is not completely aligned with China. But you're seeing that the leaders of China, or the leaders of Brazil, are trying as much as possible to align with China because they know it's in their economic interests, because of the infrastructure projects, because of the fact the United States is only allowing Brazil to grow so big. And so you see people like Lula da Silva, the current leader of Brazil, is heavily aligned with the Russia-China axis. And we could even say that Brazil was kind of a founding member of that multipolar axis because of the fact that they're a part of BRICS. So BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa was added a little bit later. But those are kind of the founding members of this new multipolar world movement, and Brazil kind of gravitated away from that movement for a little while and was more in the camp of the United States under its prior leader. However, it's been pivoting back towards the multipolar world movement because it does benefit their own country. And so Brazil seems to have a decent amount of sovereignty and a decent amount of agency and autonomy because they're able to do things that are in their own economic interest, in which case, in this instance, it is aligning more with China versus the United States. So Brazil is also one of those countries that is interested in having more kind of global international currencies. So they're trying to create a BRICS currency, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa currency, that is a competitor to the United States dollar as a reserve and trade currency. And so Brazil is one of those countries to watch out for, because while they've historically been subservient to the United States, they've been pivoting a lot towards China, especially in recent years. The next country we're going to look at is maybe a surprise to some people, but how do Latin American countries navigate their relationships with both China and the US, considering the economic opportunities and geopolitical dynamics at play. The country we're going to look at is Argentina. Argentina, people don't think about often anymore. It has one of the highest inflation rates in the world right now, up there with places like Turkey. But Argentina is a country that at one point in time, a century ago, was considered almost like the old world country in the new world. Like back when Europe was where most of the modernized countries of the world were, Argentina was one of those Europeanized, modernized countries. And I don't want to use those synonymously, but back then it was a synonym. If you were westernized, Europeanized, that was a synonym pretty much for modernization. China has shown that there are other forms of modernization that can occur, but Argentina was one of those countries that was really a powerhouse. And I think given its location, it actually could have been a pretty major trade hub. Naval trade routes now go through like the Panama area, so it goes through Central America instead of going around South America. But Argentina was really centrally located to at least be another potential trade route around Panama, around the Americas. And they had all the benefits of potentially being an industrialized nation within the Western Hemisphere, within the Americas. But I believe to a very large extent that they were sabotaged, similar to Brazil, similar to Mexico, because the United States, again, wanted no competitors to grow within the Americas. And due to Argentina being so far away from United States of America, they really needed to destabilize the country as much as possible, because they could have been another kind of a competitor, another pull within the Americas. And it would have been much harder to influence them just because of how far away from the United States they were. And so Argentina, unfortunately, is suffering under, one, just poor leadership, and two, a lack of economic opportunities, despite the fact that they have a very competent population that could be successful as a nation if they were given those opportunities. But I think to a very large extent, the opportunities are barred from them just because of the United States not wanting competitors within the region. And the last country we're going to look at should probably be another surprise to you, because it is a small country and it's not often talked about, but how Latin American countries navigate their relationships with both China and the U.S., considering the economic opportunities and geopolitical dynamics at play. El Salvador is one of those countries that it's faced a massive gang problem, very crime-ridden, but in recent years, they've started to imprison a lot of the gangsters within their country, and they have a massive prison complex now that is housing a lot of these people. And it's absolutely plummeted the crime in their country, which if you're watching and you actually care about El Salvador, the country, and the people within the country, you should be like, oh, that's amazing. They got rid of their crime problem. They got rid of their gang problem in their country. But if you're a Western nation such as America, you're looking at that in horror, because it's like, oh no, we were trying to destabilize that region using gangs, and they got rid of our major asset for destabilizing the region. And so El Salvador is facing a propaganda war to disparage their country when they're doing an excellent job of keeping order within their country, keeping their country stabilized and safe and secure for people. And obviously, that tells you that if El Salvador was not pivoting towards China, they absolutely would be pivoting towards China after that, because the United States and Western powers, Western media, news, entertainment, their propaganda arms, is doing absolutely everything possible to disparage the country, to get it to turn back from stabilizing the country, making it secure. And so El Salvador is one of those countries that is very clearly pivoting away from the United States and pivoting towards China for just security reasons, for agency and autonomy reasons, where if it wants to be a stable, secure, safe country, it has to get rid of its crime problem, and doing that puts it in conflict with the United States, because the United States wants the Americas to have a crime problem so that the United States can destabilize that region and keep it economically impoverished. And so that is my answer to how Latin American countries are navigating the US-China relations. If you liked what I had to say here, please like this video. And if you want to hear more content from me, please subscribe to our channel. I also read all the comments in the comment section. So if you have any comments, any questions, I might even make a video of it, and I will definitely read everything that you comment. So thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.